So, is it Saturday is the big day?
Saturday is the big day.
Saturday's the big day. So glad you're celebrating it.
I always celebrate my birthdays. I'm not a birthday phobe.
Right.
Some people don't like birthdays, they don't like celebrating, they don't want to know about them. And I've always enjoyed my birthdays, and I look forward to them.
This is a particularly special one, 70 years old.
70 sounds so archaic, doesn't it? When I was growing up, 70 sounded like the end of the world.
As well it should when you're growing up.
Yeah, but it's things have changed, and you're as old as you feel inside. I mean, there are days when, you know, physically I'm not feeling as great as I possibly could, but that just goes with the territory, and I think the older you get, bits start to fall off and you have to be fine-tuned a little bit more. But as far as my inner self, I feel great.
Well, you never know from the amount of shows you're still doing and your engagement with music and how much you love artists new and established, and also with your flossy dress. Like, look at this jacket, man. I feel so humbled. I look ridiculous sitting next to you.
Well, no, you're the calm before the storm.
You see, I took my chain out when I sat down. It was initially in, and then I saw you, and then I took
Your chain is so small.
Well, thanks for inviting us into your beautiful home, and it's great to be able to sit down and just kind of I always look forward to talking with you and hanging out with you, and I think because you're having this birthday, the 70th birthday, we'll dive a little deeper and get a few stories along the way. But let's focus on the party. Who's playing?
I have no idea. I don't know anything about it.
Is it a surprise
complete
party?
secret to me. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I just know that it's a celebration of my 70th and the 50 years of partnership with Bernie and myself. It's a great year this year. It's 25 years of the AIDS Foundation, 50 years of Bernie and me, and 70 years of me.
That's beautiful.
So it's nice to celebrate things. You know, life is fabulous. Life is fantastic. And I like to celebrate things.
And you do it very well, and you do it for great causes, and you do it for great events, as well as for, you know, just to have fun. And
well, the 50th and the 60th were big extravaganzas, one in London, one in New York, and this one is basically everything that's raised on the night goes to the Hammer Museum and the Elton John AIDS Foundation, because Bernie is an artist as well as a songwriter, and the arts are so important to all of us as we grow up. Every part of the arts, and have been to me all my life. But it seemed that by celebrating 70, don't spend money on yourself, make sure it goes to other people.
Well, very important right now, because amongst, you know, many things that have really kind of become clear in the way that music is being consumed, distributed, and recorded, that the songwriter and the producer is having a tougher time than ever in many respects, you know?
Well, of course. And the thing with music is changed. And life changes, and you have to accept it. It's not my favorite thing. I don't download anything. I buy my CDs, and if it's not, you know, like Migos or Young Thug or something like that, it's not available on CD, so I get the office to download it and burn me a CD. I've started to collect a lot of hip hop and rap music on vinyl, but it's hard to find them. There's a big gap. It started to come out, and then there was nothing, and now it's coming out again. And I think it would be great for Young Thug and young black acts, because, you know, it's the ritual of having a vinyl record and reading the sleeve notes, turning it over. It's great, and it sounds amazing.
What's your favorite record of your own that came out on vinyl? What was the favorite or complete thought? The way it looked, the way it felt? Was it a gatefold? Do you remember?
Oh, probably Captain Fantastic, because of the sleeve and the Alan Aldridge drawings and the storyboard, because it was about Bernie and I. So probably that one.
You know, it's funny. I was sort of brushing up on my sort of day-to-day knowledge of your career, because obviously I know you now. We've worked together, and you know, we get along. But having to remind myself exactly, you know, what the last sort of 50 years that you and Bernie have been spending making music together has entailed, and it's overwhelming. I mean, the journey you've been on is just incredible. What you've achieved and experienced.
I don't really look back. I'm not one to.
I can tell, because you just keep going on to the next thing.
Well, I find it kind of sad if you are a little bit, what's the word melancholy. There are times when I hear something of mine, I think, oh, that sounds okay, but I don't listen to my stuff. I don't listen to the old stuff. I don't see the point. Only as a point of reference if one has to rehearse something.
But you never listen to your albums once they're finished? You never go and enjoy them or listen to them?
I do once they're in the studio, but then once they're out, I don't listen to them, no. I move on to something else. I'm extremely proud of what we've done and the volume of work we've done and the quality of it. And some things like the more recent things, which, you know, people say, well, he hasn't written anything decent for years. And they say, well, they don't bother to go and listen to The Diving Board or you know, Wonderful Crazy Night. They're just, you know, they're lazy. But it's just, there's more to be done. And I don't look back on many things. When I do, I'm pleasantly surprised.
Well, I'll tell you what blew me away was I started at the beginning and I went to, at least as far as your own solo material is concerned, and I listened to Empty Sky and I listened to the first song on it, and it's 8 minutes long. It has backwards, like reverse guitars. It's like, it's prog rock. It's crazy.
Yeah.
What a crazy opening statement to make.
It's one of my favorite rock tracks I've ever done.
It sounds like Pearl Jam.
All done on 4-track, and the guitar solo was done in a stairwell because we wanted to get the echo right, and we didn't have the great echo chambers in those days. No, it's good to be proud of what you've done, and I love to listen to other people's old material, and it never get. But as far as I've gone, my career goes, I just feel as if I have other things to do, and I think Bernie probably thinks the same way. Not that I don't want to listen to it, I don't really have time to listen to it. I'm not too taken up with listening to new things.
I was listening to that record, and then I was reading up some of the things that were being written about this forthcoming book.
Well, I'm doing a memoir with Alex Dispatridis from The Guardian, and it's, I was going to do a book with my dear friend Ingrid Sishi, who I've known for years. She used to be the editor of Interview magazine, and she's my best friend. And unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. And I shelved the book then, and that was going to be a biography. But David said, you know, you should do it just for the boys, and you should start. And Alexis is a great writer, and he also is a friend of mine, and when he writes me emails, I just cry with laughter. So he started taping me and jogging my memory, and it's fun. I've forgotten so many things, but once I remember, I mean, I went through, the book's going to start more or less at Dodger Stadium at the height. And then it goes, I reminisce about my childhood and the music, because music has been so central to my life the whole time. Playing in my bands and, supporting Jimi Hendrix. And all the memories start flooding back. Boy, have I had an incredible life.
But did you support Jimi Hendrix?
Yeah. At the Nottingham Locarno. In those days, the Nottingham Locarno, those kind of ballrooms had revolving stages. So I played with Jimmy James and the Vagabonds, Long John Baldry and us, and Jimi Hendrix.
Crazy.
And so there were the three of us. And so one would be playing while the other one was getting ready behind the stage. And as soon as the other one finished, the stage revolved, and there you were.
And there you were.
And I remember saying hello to Jimi Hendrix, and I was so in awe of him because I went to see him at the Marquee Club. I was a huge fan. And he was so sweet and so nice. And so, I played with Jimi Hendrix.
Now, I was thinking about you and Bernie and that relationship that you have forged together with slight interruption toward the middle, but obviously they're coming back together for you to continue writing. And, was it an immediate, what was the chemistry like when you first met? Was it based on friendship? Was it based purely on you loved his words and he loved your music and the friendship came later? What was it?
It was kismet, basically. I mean, we met through an advertisement for the New Musical Express. I was in a band getting cheesed off playing cabaret. He was a little teenager in Lincolnshire, digging potatoes, and he wanted to be a lyricist. We both answered the same ad. I went into Liberty Records in Albemarle Street in London, said, I can write songs, but I can't write lyrics. And you have to remember, I was very kind of chubby, I was very insecure, but I was so fed up with doing what I did. I thought anything's better than this. So I took a leap, it's called the leap of faith, I think. And he did the same thing. So I go in the office, and Ray Williams, who was there running the audit, there was tons and tons of reel-to-reel. It was reel-to-reel. Reel-to-reel tapes, envelopes, and he gave me an envelope that was unopened. And said, this guy sent some lyrics in from Lincolnshire. See what you think. Now, of all the envelopes,
I know,
of all the chances of me answering that ad and him answering that.
Crazy.
And I went home on the tube, and I opened it, and I thought, I like these. They're very Procol Harum-ish, very esoteric, as it was in the 60s. And I started writing melodies to his lyrics, and I found it very easy.
Really easy.
And so we met, he came down to London, he moved in, we finally got a contract with Dick Doing Music, and he was the friend I never had. He was like a brother. We loved music, we listened to, we bought a stereo together in a club book. I like paying $5 bob a week. We loved buying records. And we used to sit with our headphones on, listening to records. He loved literature, he loved art, and so he taught me a lot about literature. And we went to the cinema, we did everything there. We went to the pub. We were just inseparable. And we just, we were so unalike, and we were so different that I think that's why we got on. And we were like brothers. He was fantastic.
I mean, it is just the most remarkable, like you say, kismet, that you would find someone whose words resonated so purely with you and vice versa.
And they were good,
Has he ever written a bad lyric? Has he ever written a bad one?
As far as I'm concerned, no. He's writing difficult ones that I can't do. But
And that's just a phrasing, or it's a placement, and things.
Yeah, it's just a subject matter. I can't, sometimes, because in the early days there were no verses and choruses. It was just whole lines, and I should divide them up.
Wow, so he was just brain dumping.
Yeah,
and you
so
were trying to
I cut the last verse of Daniel out because it's like, I know, too long. You see me crossing it out, which explained the whole song.
Oh my God.
And so the enigma of Daniel appears because I crossed out that, and it's too long. Beep, beep.
Can you tell me he still has that somewhere? I'm sure he must have.
I don't know.
That would be amazing if you found the hidden version, like the
But
last
it's never
verse.
been a collaboration of sorts. It's been an, he's never been in the same room. I've never questioned his lyrics and told him to write something. Philadelphia Freedom, I asked him to write because it was for Billie Jean King. But apart from that, I'm just always wondering what I'm going to get. And that hasn't changed since 1967.
Wow.
Up to the present day, because you think, I wonder what I'm going to get this time.
Now
so
you get it on email. You get it on email, right? So it comes on email now.
It comes on email now. It started out by handwritten.
Yeah.
It went to typed, then it was faxed, and then now it's email. But the process has always been as exciting because I go away and I write the lyric and I come back and play it to him. And I've always been as thrilled to play him a new song as I have in 1967. Because we don't interfere with, we're not in each other's back pockets.
Yeah.
And the relationship, even though, yes, we did do things together, not together. He went and wrote with somebody else, and I did as well. And when he said, I want to write with somebody else, and I thought, what am I going to do? Was I jealous? A bit jealous, yeah. But if you love someone, I thought, I can't say to him, no, you can only write with me, because that will end our relationship. And it was a necessary thing for both of us to do. He was very successful. It was never a break. It was just a letting go, and then coming back together.
Must have been quite hard on the writers who you did work with, at least initially after you took the break from each other, because it's for him, he can go and take his words and see if he can find someone who melodically gets it. But those words and you seemed to have a chemistry even without, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it was hard for me because I used to write melodies first then, and I never did that. So when I was writing with Gary Osborne and Tim Rice and people like that, it was a different way of writing for me. But in that way, it was good for both of us.
Yeah.
It was good for both of us. And it was never, ever going to be, I can honestly say this, but during the 50 years of our relationship, personal and professional, we have never had an argument.
Not one.
Not one. He's looked at me disapprovingly a couple of times during the halcyon days of drug taking and things like that.
Yeah.
But, or he said, can you remember what you did last night? And I went, no. He said, yeah, someone should show you a tape of it. But we've never had an argument. We've never had a disagreement. And I'm so proud of that more than anything else. The relationship has gotten stronger and stronger over the years. The love has gotten stronger over the years. And it's a story that no one else will ever be able to duplicate.
Never. There's one moment that I was listening through on your song, which was a song that changed you and his life, on Tumbleweed Connection, and it was the moment when it all really began, in terms of the success. And the unprecedented success of the 70s, was that bit where you go, is it when you go, heh, at the beginning of the second verse, is it, if I were a
sculpture, but then again, no.
Yeah, and I wondered about that little heh, because to me it really, more than anything, it was a sweet moment, but it symbolized the way that you deliver your songs, which is in a very conversational way.
Yeah, and well, he's a storytelling kind of writer. And
did you write the hit, or did you put that in yourself?
No, I just did it on, it's just one of those ad-lib things you do, and they kept it in. The thing with that album was, it was a very expensive album to make for those days. It cost £5,000, but I had to, everything was played live, except for the vocals. I had to play with the orchestra. It was done over 2 days. Quite
a lot of complicated harpsichord going on there as well.
Harpsichord is the hardest
really
thing to play.
Hard, yeah.
And I need you to turn to. And I've got to play with this string section. And it's like, the technique of playing a harpsichord is so much different to a piano. It's, the notes aren't, they stick, they do this, they do that. So that was a pretty wonderful moment for me, actually, because I was scared stiff. And it gave me a lot of backbone. I'd already had so much backbone by doing all these shows with Bluesology and stuff, but playing with an orchestra on my second album, but my first really big chance, and all this collection of songs which were very orchestral, and playing live to all of them, I couldn't make a mistake. And it gave me a lot of resolve and a lot of experience. And the ha was
I just love it because to me it's kind of symbolizes what I love about, and millions of people love about the way that you deliver your songs is that it feels like you're speaking to me. It's a very natural thing to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like you're performing this song. It feels like you're actually communicating it direct to the listener.
I'm singing his story.
Yeah, you know. But it's fascinating that you would get to that point so early on, because I can imagine being someone who was writing songs for others, searching for your voice within other people because it's a confidence thing, and then all of a sudden you have a hit record. And over the course of 1970 to 73, you have multiple hit records. At what point did you actually find yourself in all of that? And is part of the reason why you started to dress up and do all these things because you were sort of felt like you were almost acting in some respects?
Well, when I did the Elton John album, I had a real proper producer. I had Gus Dudgeon, and I had Paul Buckmaster doing the arrangement. And we were a team. And when I was searching for a producer for that album, I said, I want the guy who produced Space Oddity by David Bowie, and the guy who did the arrangement, and that was Gus and Paul. And Gus, I did many, many albums with him, and we were a team, and he guided me. It wasn't just me. I had a lot of great people around who I learned from, and I just was inspired by it. And I wasn't really an album. Your song was a hit from that album, but there were no singles taken from Tumbleweed. There were 2 mini hits in America, Tiny Dancer and Leave On, from Madman. It was only till I changed track and added a guitarist to the band. My band didn't play on my records. We were one of the biggest live bands in the world. Nigel Olsson on drums, Dee Murray on bass and vocals.
Yeah.
And they didn't play my records.
Yeah.
They played on the live record, which is fantastic. But until I got David Johnson in the band on guitar and mandolin and banjo, they never played on the record. And when we did the Honky Chateau record, it shifted momentum, and I started to have hits because I started to write in a band way.
And your voice changed too in some respects.
And on the early albums, I was just writing for piano. And then when David joined, I started writing with guitars in mind. And that's when the hits started to come. Like Rocket Man was my first really big commercial record.
And at that point, you felt sort of like you had a better understanding about who people wanted to see in terms of you as an artist, because
I was always crazy. I mean, even with the Elton John album, I came to the Troubadour in 1970 in September, and there was the dark album cover and the beautiful introspective music, and they thought it might be Randy Newman coming on stage, very serious. But it wasn't. It was this guy in hot pants and flying boots, and was doing somersaults and not somersaults, handstands.
But you were a shy
and rocking
kid.
out.
Where did that come from? Because you said
Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw those 2 guys play the piano, everything changed. Jerry Lee Lewis jumped on the piano, played from the top of the piano, played underneath the piano. Little Richard stood up and played the piano. As soon as I saw those 2 people play the piano, everything changed. My whole life changed. It's like for guitarists, when Chuck Berry picked up a guitar, their whole life changed. He changed guitarists' lives. Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis changed my life.
When I think about that time for you in the 70s with all that success, unprecedented, and for someone who, it's not like today, someone can look at the people from the previous and go, okay, I kind of see the road has been paved, and I can stick to this, and I know it's possible, and I can survive it. But it must have felt in many respects like you were the first man in space having that kind of success.
I was having a ball. I did so much work in 5 years, so many albums, 2 albums a year, plus separate singles, plus separate B-sides, radio shows, touring. All my life I've loved music. So to become able to come to America and to see people like Leon Russell in the audience for your first shows, and to meet the band, to meet Dylan, to have telegrams from George Harrison, to have people who you idolize and respect so much validate what you do.
Yeah.
To be able to go into an American record store and buy and look at the vinyl. Everything that I loved about music came from America, basically. And I think you can say that. Jazz, rock and roll music, country music, standards, all originated in America. So when you come here, it's like, wow. And then you meet your artist. Neil Diamond introduced me on stage at the first night of the Troubadour because he wanted me. What an amazingly kind thing to do. I was treated with so much kindness and so much respect that my confidence grew. We were already a good band because we'd had a year or so of playing. So our confidence was pretty high before we came. It's not as if we just landed and suddenly thought, well, here we go. We got to think about a show. We were a terrific 3-piece
People talk
band.
about that first Troubadour show, though, like it was a legiondary first statement in America.
And also the live albums, 11, 70 to 70. And that is one of the, for me, one of the finest live albums ever. And I'm not good at giving myself praise, but the musicianship on that record from Nigel and Dee alone is quite extraordinary. And, it just you can tell we were having fun by just listening to that record. We were having a blast. And, being able to do what you love. And in those days, things were different. I mean, nowadays a record can stay around for a year and a half on the charts. In those days, you were gone in 10. You had AM radio, which was pop radio, and you had the advent of FM radio, which coincided with my success. And FM radio meant that you had stereo, and you could have a station that would play Frank Zappa, the Beatles, me, Aretha, Simon and Garfunkel, everyone together, Ray Charles. AM radio was pop records, and that your record stayed 10 weeks max. Then you had another one come out,
and that's why you had to keep moving.
That's why you kept moving. Things were much quicker done than nowadays. You're still hearing things on the radio that you're still hearing "Hello" by Adele. Goodbye, not hello, goodbye. It's not because I don't like it. It's like there are other things to play.
I just think it's crazy to me, like in the 70s when when you were literally in the eye of the storm, and I mean, you couldn't have been more popular in the world. You had consecutive #1 albums. You're selling out. You've gone from the Troubadour to stadiums.
Right.
You're doing what every young man or woman who goes through that situation is probably tempted to do. So the drugs and the alcohol and the partying, the late nights, and yet you're writing "Goodbye Yellow Brick Road."
Yeah.
I mean, most people are falling into a cab and going off to hospital and having their stomach pumped, and yet somehow you're getting up in the morning and writing "Goodbye Yellow Brick Road."
And then following it up with Captain Fantastic. Caribou, then Captain Fantastic.
Do you even remember everything about that decade and how, because I'm not talking just about the drugs and the alcohol, but just how quickly the music and everything was flooding out?
Well, I wrote Captain Fantastic on the SS France. We came over, the band came over on the SS France, and Julian Lennon and Cynthia were on the boat, my friend Tony King, and I used to rent the music room for an hour and a half at lunch. And in those days, I used to write the songs and remember them because I didn't record them on a cassette recorder. So most of the Captain Fantastic album was written in order, because the lyrics were written in order, because it's a story. And it was written on the boat in 4 days, coming from Southampton to New York.
Unbelievable.
And I had an incredible thirst for writing. I mean, when you have momentum, it's hard to stop. And every artist who's huge like I was has that momentum, whether you're Madonna, whether you're Springsteen, Phil Collins, Prince. Everyone goes through that golden period where you just can't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
And it becomes that you don't think about it, you just do it. And I knew, because I always followed the charts as a child, I knew the music business. I could run a record label if you wanted me to. I know the business inside out, because it fascinates me that there will be a day when my records wouldn't come in at #1, and that was my savior. That, because some people can't cope with that.
You prepared yourself in some respects.
And I was thinking, you know what? Even if they don't come in at #1, they'll do okay. But my live performances will carry me through.
Yeah.
And I knew that, and I'd had enough hits, for Christ's sake. I had a top 40 record every year for 34 years.
Unbelievable.
And first record to come in at #1. But, those things didn't make me big-headed. They just made me... It's a bit like Ed Sheeran's like that. I helped manage Ed Sheeran. And he's just the same as I am. He just loves the pressure. It's not really pressure. It's momentum. And it's the joy of being in that situation where you can just say, I'm going to write this now. I'm going to write that. I wrote Philadelphia Freedom. I did Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. And we found time because it wasn't a job. It's not a job. It's a privilege.
And is that why, when it comes to playing piano and your instrument and stuff, that you keep it very much to yourself? I never get the feeling that you play piano for any other reason except you're going to get these songs to people and you're going to write these.
I love the piano. I play the piano to perform. I don't play at home.
Yeah.
Because I play enough. I love playing in the studio. I love writing. But I don't play at home unless my boys ask me to play. But they're not that interested, to be honest with you. So the piano is a means of me...
But you could play from 3. I mean, we started when you were 3, and you picked things up by ear very quickly, and it's been well documented.
Yeah, and then I had lessons, which I'm very grateful for, and I went to the Royal Academy for 5 years, and I love the Royal Academy very much, and I'm a professor there and a doctorate, and I feel very attached to them, and I've done things for them, and there are 8 students get a grant from me every year to go and have a career there. And it's very important because it gave me a lot of knowledge. I didn't like playing classical music very much because I don't have very big hands. I love the music, but I wanted to be Little Richard. My mind was made up.
I do want to talk about the costumes when they got their most outrageous, and I wonder, where are they now? Where are all these costumes?
A lot of them went to museums, but a lot of them are still in in storage.
Like which one? Like what's in storage? Like where's Donald? Where's the duck?
Donald's in storage.
Donald's in storage.
I let Courtney Love wear that one night for a performance. The giant chicken outfit is in storage. Yeah, there's a lot of it in storage, and obviously, as I get older, then they'll come out of storage, and there might be a museum show and blah blah blah. And when I look back on what people keep sending me things. Do you remember wearing this? Oh my God. I just, I don't think anyone wore as many different things as I did.
Hey, listen, you can look at those costumes and most of them still aren't as bad as the ones you were wearing in the 80s. So I wouldn't worry too much about it.
The ones in the 80s, the ones in Australia when I did the orchestral trip, when I had the punk hairdos and stuff like that. But I loved it. It's part of it for me. It was always about, I'm stuck at a piano.
Yeah.
I'm not Mick, I'm not David, I'm not Mark Bolan, I'm not Rod. I don't move around. And I've always envied those people so much because it's so great, and they're different physique to me. And when you're at a piano, all you can do is stand at it like Jerry Lee Lewis, or jump on it, or Little Richard, and it's a 9-foot plank that you have to make interesting. So I lit it up. I made it something of interest, and I crawl underneath it. I did whatever. I jumped on it. Even my high-heeled shoes. I had to use it as a kind of prop. And my costumes were such that I've always, it gave me the chance to, in my early 20s, do the things I couldn't do in my youth. I could just be who I wanted to be for the time, and the more the merrier. And a lot of people didn't like that because they said it took away from the integrity and the meaningful of the songs. And maybe it did. And I think probably Bernie thought, well, raised his eyebrows, oh, bloody hell. But for me, I took it too far. But that's what an addict does. He takes things too far. But I don't regret it.
Who saved you? Who do you think, was it you that came to your own conclusion when it was time to stop, or did someone take
No, I was very lucky. I had a boyfriend who challenged me and went away to treatment. But I was very lucky enough to know Ryan White and his family, and that's really who really changed me a lot, because I spent the last week of Ryan's life in Indianapolis, along with Howie Long and Judith Light and people like that, and I knew Jeannie and the family, his mother and his sister very well, and they never complained about anything, and they'd gone through hell. He'd gone through hell. I never heard him complain. I never heard them complain. They were what I call true Christian people, and they forgave. And I thought, God, you forgive people that were so horrible to you. And I used to go back to my hotel in Indianapolis thinking, oh, bloody wallpaper's hideous in here. And I knew that I knew inside of me, I always knew inside of me that something was radically wrong. But that was the inspiration. 6 months later, I was sober. And it was like, I've got to give something back. I can't carry on behaving like this.
And that's when you started to turn your attention towards things like the Elton John AIDS Foundation eventually.
Yeah, of course. I wanted to give something back because I felt guilty about not being at the forefront of the ACT UP stuff, and I was, I did a record of That's What Friends Are For. I did things for Elizabeth, but I really, as a gay man, I should have done more. But I was incapable because I was out to lunch some of the time. And when you're a drug addict and you're an alcoholic, you're self-absorbed. And I'm not that kind of person. I'm a kind person. I'm a thoughtful person, but I just didn't recognize myself anymore.
In the 80s, things were really changing and really turning around, and not just for yourself, but in music. And all of a sudden, we emerged out of the 80s, and in the late part of the 80s with a bit more of a conscience, and we started to look towards like, how can art help? How can musicians help? And and then you go into this kind of this sort of 10 years of Live Aid and things like that. I mean, what are your sort of like prevailing feelings about that decade?
It's a bit of a haze. I just tried to experiment to keep up. The record company wanted me to make more commercial kind of records, which I tried to do. And I had lots of hits, and I wrote some really good things, and I wrote some really mediocre things, which is par for the course when you're doing drugs. But I enjoyed the 80s. I enjoyed the emergence of Boy George. I enjoyed the flamboyance of it. I love the punk era because, it's like they're all having a go at me on television and thinking, boy, and bastard I am. And I thought, God, I wish I was 10 years younger. I'd be wearing those clothes. I always accept every era. I like change.
Yeah.
And without change, without new blood, music dies and culture dies. And punk wasn't so much about the music as a statement of, get off your asses and stop being complacent.
Did you ever have an experience with John, from the Pistols, when at that moment in time? Where
I've met him a couple of times. We've had our little moments, but I like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always find him interesting, and I think he's got some interesting things to say. Yeah.
It's funny because along the way, when I think about like, you know, the friendships and certainly the public sort of friendships that you've had with people like Axl Rose and Eminem and Robbie Williams, and these people that at certain points in their lives have been at crossroads of public opinion, you know, there's a bit of a thread to that, and it seems that you sort of come in and say, look, you know, I understand that there's perspective here, and you seem to offer
I'm always
services.
a supporter of the people that are getting trashed, and you know, for me, Eminem was never homophobic. I mean, I listened to the whole of the Marshall Mathers album when I drove to a show in Southampton, and I was floored by it. And I thought, how can anyone think this is, you know, he's just writing about the way things are, not how he thinks, but the way things are. And the same with Axl. Never in a million years did I think it was homophobic. So I did things. I did the MTV Music Awards with him and the Guns N' Roses, and I did the Grammys with Marshall, and I became very big friends with Marshall. I'll fight for anyone who is misunderstood and misrepresented by the idiots out there.
And you seem to be very, you know, you're very loyal to the art as well, which I really love. It's like you're able to identify things according to your own moral compass.
Yeah.
But it never really gets in the way of the art. Like you kind of you're able to see art for what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only just music, but visual art, theater, writing, everything. It's just a whole, you know, I surround myself, I'm very lucky enough to be affluent enough to buy wonderful pieces of art and photography.
It's a big part of your life.
And that inspires me on a daily basis, just subconsciously. It's great. I'm lucky enough to, and I love it, and I put it on my walls. I don't put it in storage. Yeah,
because I see a lot of it around, and obviously we're not going to put the cameras on a ton of it, but it's incredible when you walk around this house, and it's just, you see iconic images everywhere, and it's nice to actually see it being enjoyed.
You must live it, enjoy it. Listen, we live for a certain amount of time. We don't know when our death sentence will be. So my motto is live every day, and especially now I have the children, it's taken my life even further. It's given me new. I mean, I've had a fabulously wonderful life. Yeah, there's been some bad things happen, but it happens to everybody in life. But you have to move on. You have to try and sort yourself out. But having the children has been the icing on the cake for me, and it's made everything so much more enjoyable.
What have you learnt about yourself, do you think?
Well, I learned that I can. I mean, when I thought. I never wanted to have children. I thought, God, no, they mess everything up. They'll do this, they'll do that, and you know, I'm too selfish. And everything I thought I was, I'm not, because of them. And I have so much love for them and so much enjoyment from them. First thing I do every morning when I get up is try and FaceTime them if I'm not with them. They've taught me a lot. They taught me to be patient. They've taught me that love is never as powerful as when you have a child.
It's true.
And people who don't have children, and they say, well, we're very happy. I can understand that, absolutely. I wasn't. If you'd have said to me 10 years ago, oh, you're going to be sitting here talking about your two sons, and I'd have laughed in your face, and what have you taken? But I have. I took the leap of faith, and that was a leap of faith because we tried to adopt a little boy in Ukraine and his stepbrother, and we couldn't do it because of bureaucracy. And David and I sat down and said, what do you think? And I said, well, that boy was trying to tell me something. It's like, you can be. Don't be such a stupid idiot. And I said, I feel maybe I'm a little too old. And David said, well, think about it. You don't have to rush and make the decision. And it was, again, the sign, like it was from the enemy. That 2 or 3 times in my life it's happened. And that was, I said, yes, let's have our own children.
And it happened with David as well. I mean,
it happened with David. I was sitting at my house in England 3 years after I got sober, rang up a friend in London, said, I don't know anybody anymore. I just know AA people. It's a Saturday afternoon. Is there any way you can invite some people down for dinner? Nothing, I just want to meet some people. Nothing hanky-panky, nothing like that. And lo and behold, that night, David walks through my door, and if I hadn't have made that phone call, I wouldn't have met him. So it's those 3 moments in my life, and there have been others as well, but those 3 big moments have been a sign from somewhere, whether it's God or the God that you understand, or there's definitely a sign that pushed me.
You know, the relationship that you and David have forged over the course of, decades now, is something that has not only impacted your life positively, but, you've put yourselves out front, you've gone out there and you've been proud of yourselves as a couple, and you've been the first in the queue to go and make it official, you know what I mean? And I love that. And I just wonder, at a time like this, as you're about to turn 70, what is the greatest thing, apart from having children together, that you've taken from that relationship with David over the course of
it's just gotten better and better and better. We've had our ups and downs like every other couple. but I think his love for me, and he hasn't, he's not exactly Mr. Popularity with a lot of people who've fallen by the wayside, that had to fall by the wayside because they were useless. He's not Mr. Popularity, and they call him Yoko. But for me, he's the most loving, wonderful, thinks about me, he's now taken over the business reins and is doing a better job than anyone's ever done before. You talk to anyone within our organization, our record company, anybody, and things have never been better with him in charge. And our love has grown stronger and stronger after. It's our 24th year together this year. And you have to work at it. You're married. Every relationship goes through, but with the children, it makes a difference.
Oh man.
It makes such a difference because it's all about them. It's not about you.
Oh, it's the greatest.
And it's the greatest thing you'll ever know. And people say, well, I disagree with it. I don't want children. That's fine. Great.
Yep,
fine.
get it.
And I would have said the same thing until I had them.
Yeah.
And I went, wow, this is it? Are you kidding me? If I was 15 years younger, I'd have 2 or 3 more, without question.
How much money have you raised with the Elton John AIDS Foundation?
$400 million.
That is incredible.
From a really, very small operations in America and in England. And it's never gotten bigger than it should do, because one of the things when I started that, I said, I've seen so many charity things waste money, flying people in, put them up at hotels, and they, at the end of the day, end up with 20,000 instead of 3 million. And I said, I'm not going to do this. Everything I do is accountable for. Everyone who gives us money, they have to know where it goes. So, and that's been my mantra for the whole thing. And it's been 25 years. But we have grown into an amazing organization. I mean, there were so many organizations when we started out, and now there's us. This is probably the smallest, and there's the Gates Foundation, the World Health Organization, the Clinton Foundation, AMFAR, and PEPFAR, and we all work together. And it's the best thing because we all have to work together. And we have to fight on behalf of people who need this money.
This is life and death.
Yeah, and it's a new administration that we have in America at the moment, and I've written to the president, I've written to Paul Ryan, I've written to Rex Tillerson.
Have you received a response?
Not yet, but the things I'm reading about the PEPFAR thing are quite encouraging. The ACA is very worrying, the Affordable Care Act, because that will affect a lot of people's ability to afford and get treatment on HIV. But there are things, people are very critical of the administration.
But you've always been very administratively open, though. I think you go in with a certain benefit of doubt.
Listen, whoever's in power, you have to work with. Whether you like them, hate them, whatever. My mantra is, I'm going to have to, at some point, to get off my backside and go to Washington and talk to Congress and Senate and go into the Senate and meet the senators, meet the congressmen, and deal with these people, to work with them. It's no good falling apart. Things don't get solved by being, as much as you hate whatever goes on, you have to work with people. You don't get problems solved by being apart.
Who has been your favorite leader that you worked with thus far? Who was the easiest to work with and the easiest to speak to?
I would say Bill Clinton and Hillary and President Obama and all the people that do such wonderful jobs within the Senate and the Congress. Lindsey Graham, for example, is absolutely wonderful. So, you go there with thinking, oh, they're going to hate me, But they know I've been in the game now for quite some time. They know that my track record can't be questioned, and know that my foundation is squeaky clean. And they're great to work with. You have to work with people. And you can say, well, I'm not going to meet President Trump because I don't like him, I don't like that. I've known Donald Trump for years. He come to my shows. If I have to meet the president and ask for money for aid and schmooze him, I'm going to do it.
Well, dude, I mean,
because it's not for me, it's other people.
Yeah.
If I open my big mouth and say, I can't stand this administration, I hate them, then that's going to put people's lives at jeopardy, and I cannot afford to do that, and I'm not going to do it.
I think about one of probably the most emotional moments of your life as an artist and a human being when in 1997 you sang Candle in the Wind. It had been rewritten by Bernie.
Right.
And you did it with so much grace, and you seemed to be so in control of that situation because, well, I know you.
If you only knew.
Yeah. Well, how do you do it?
It's called experience, and all those years spent in the van, driving up and down the M1, playing to in clubs. It's all those things about playing live with the orchestra. It's years of money in the bank, playing shows, getting backbone, and professionalism. And I knew at that moment in time that I could not afford to be emotional. Because I wasn't singing it for me. I was singing it for people outside, standing outside the cathedral, or the abbey. And I couldn't afford to pick it up. And that was the first time I ever used a teleprinter. Video, because if I sang Goodbye Norma Jean, as you might, I would be hung, drawn, and quartered. So it was an amazing week. I mean, it just all came together within 3 or 4 days. And, through the royal family, through the Westminster Abbey, through the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Prime Minister, blah, blah, blah. So, I hadn't sung that lyric. I'd sung Candle in the Wind so many times. So I had to make sure you can, in the last verse, you just hear my voice crack just slightly. But other than that, I didn't cry. I didn't cry during the service. I went straight to the studio with George Martin, to the townhouse. I played 2 tracks of it live and sang live. And then he chose the best one and then put the cellos on. It was out on the Monday. I went home. By the time David and I got home to Windsor, she was already on the M1, going up to Althorpe. And
you must have had a little cry there.
Then I broke down.
Yeah.
And it makes me emotional to think of what got me was seeing the little boys walking, and what they must have been going through, having had 2 little boys then of my own. And it was 20 years ago. It was the same 6 weeks after my best friend Gianni Basati was killed.
I know.
And it was just the weirdest summer of my life. But when I was doing that, I wasn't doing that as Elton John. I was representing my country and representing millions and billions of people throughout the world. So I had to deliver. And you have to pull your boots up and get on with it. And that's what professional people do.
So what does a knighthood get you these days?
What does it get me? People are so enamored with it over here. They don't give a shit in England because it's like the English are so fabulous because nothing's sacred in England, and I love that about it.
Yeah, me too.
I like the irreverence. I like the fact that you'll always be shot down if you get too big for your boots. I mean, for example, Elvis Presley would never have survived. He would probably be alive if he lived in England, and Michael Jackson, because they would have, it's like they wouldn't put up with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it gets you down with the press over there. But I'd rather have that than the adulation and the bubble. It's much better for me to live there than here, because over here, people like Beyonce and people like they're your royalty over here, and it's a little bit dangerous, I think. Although she's got her feet firmly planted.
Oh yeah.
She's a great girl.
Unbelievable.
I don't have any doubts about her. But I'm saying, look at Elvis Presley. Could you imagine that happening in England?
No.
Come on, get it. What's the matter with you? Get it together. And yet George Michael happened in England.
Yeah. I love that you're still such a music fan, and I love that you've been a music fan since you were a kid and you've never stopped. And I love that you still look at artists with this, literally through rose-tinted glasses. Yeah. And I wondered, like, when you think, and just indulging me here, like, who was, or is still, was the most charismatic? Who was the one that blew you away when you met them for the first time and you were just like...
God almighty, that's difficult. Well, Leon Russell for a start, because he was sitting in the second night of the Troubadour, sitting there. I idolized him as a piano player, and he had that grey white hair, and he looked really frightening.
Yeah.
And I'd have been such a fan of him for so long that when he came into the dressing room, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And we became friends, and he was so sweet. Bob Dylan, obviously. Bernie and I met Bob Dylan on a stairwell at Fillmore East.
Yeah.
And
was it prepared?
He was very
or was it by
sweet. I was
accident?
like, oh my God.
So you weren't expecting it?
And then I remember when I used to do session music, I was a session musician when I was starting out with Bernie. And I remember going and playing on an English band called the Barron Knights, who used to make comedy records. And it was at EMI at Abbey Road. And I was standing there and talking to the boys, and they were so funny. And in walked Paul McCartney. And Bernie was with me. And it's just when Hey Jude was #1.
Yeah.
And the guys in the Barron Knights asked him to play it, and he sat down to play it and played it with.
Oh my God.
John Lennon. John Lennon was so charismatic. Elvis Presley wasn't so charismatic because he was such a mess.
Yeah.
But he was still for me, a wonder to me.
So when you became friends with these, I mean, you know, because it's the beautiful thing I love about, if you're a dreamer, if you find a passion in life, and I try and instill this in my kids, and I think, you know, and you find a passion in life, then you should dream big, because the dreams will eventually put you on this path towards your heroes, towards these moments, right? So you're such a huge fan of McCartney and Lennon, of Dylan. So next thing you know, you're in a stairwell meeting Bob Dylan. This is a manifestation of destiny, correct? Plant a seed, stay the course, you'll get there. When you become friends with John Lennon, when you know now that that last performance that you had in New York City with him, for tragic reasons, is logged in history as the last time he performed like that. And you just think like, my God, I was a fan.
No.
It's crazy.
I know. It's surreal. I mean, Aretha Franklin's another one. I mean, she was the first person to record one of our songs, Border Song. And it resulted in her having about 8 or 9 top 10 records in a row, us breaking the run because it didn't get into the top 10. But whenever I've met her, she has blown me away, and I feel really humbled in her presence. And Nina Simone was another one. I met her once at her last concert at Carnegie Hall when she did the Rainforest concert. I was mesmerized with her. I was mesmerized with Ray Charles, mesmerized by Jerry Lee Lewis. I met Jerry Lee Lewis a couple of years ago at the New Orleans Jazz Festival for the first time, and I was so frightened of meeting him because I thought he was going to say, "Listen, you little
you stole all my moves."
And he was so lovely, and his wife was so lovely, and he played brilliantly. Little Richard, all those people, I've never met anybody who was a disappointment.
Wow. I think because you're a fan. I think because you're a super fan of music and you love it.
When the band walked into my dressing room when I was playing the Electric Factory in Philadelphia.
Robbie Robertson, the whole crew.
They came down, they did a show, and they came down to see me because they knew music from Big Pink changed my life.
Yeah.
And they walked into the dressing room and I went, oh my, it was just, and to get that respect and as I say, it validates you. And that's why I try with my radio programs on Beats One, and I try and do that for other people. I try and phone them up. I've done it for a long time. If I hear something, validation means you give an artist extra comforts, whether it's the guy from the Shins, whether it's the Lemon Twigs.
You called me up once.
Whether it's Fountains of Wayne, whether it's,
whoever,
whether it's Laura Mvula, or it's whoever it is. But you ring them up and you say, I've rang Bragg and Bowman up, it's just, you feel a bit of a twit. But
No.
That's probably why I don't look back so much. And, I have a full-time career, so I don't have to. If I had my last hit, 30 years ago, and my career was tailing off, then I probably would be nostalgic. But I'm not, because there's so much music to listen to, so much great new music, and it's harder for young musicians now to earn money. So it's important to give them, like Parker Millsap, like Sarah Jarosz, and Christine and the Queen, Rosie Lowe. They all did my Apple thing with me in London, and they were all brilliant. And they were all different. And it was for me, that was one of the greatest nights of my life that night. Because we all got on so well, they all performed brilliantly, and they must have been really nervous and intimidated, but they were all superb, and they were all different musicians. And that's what I love. That's what I feed on. That's what keeps me going.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I wondered what your thoughts are, given the way that you've seen music change. You talk about the way that your lyrics were delivered from, handwritten through to eventually fax and email. And, in many respects, you could put that into a musical framework. Now music is so instantly accessible and moves so fast between, which is great.
But I've written a couple of songs with Clean Bandit, and that's been going on for about a year and a half. And it's cool. I call it the cut and paste process, because you do something and then they'll come back to it and they'll change it and they'll move it here and they'll move it there. And it's a whole different process.
Do you like that,
right on the, I don't know if I like it or not, but it's interesting. You have to accept it. It's the way people write. If I haven't finished a song within 20 minutes, I give up. And I come back to it. I don't give up, I come back to it. But it's a whole different way of writing. You see on hit records, 11 writers. And it's like, wow, are you kidding me? And that's why I don't think the average pop song these days is as good, because it comes from
too many places.
A robotic process rather than a human process. And I will say this, music is nowhere near as good now as it was in the 50s, 60s and 70s and the 80s, because it's changed and it's more robotic, and there's, people aren't writing the heartfelt songs that they should be writing. You know, that's why Ed Sheeran is so successful. That's why Adele is so successful, because it's coming from an authentic source. It's not a team of people sitting around a laptop. And I will say that, but there are so many great things that don't get played on commercial radio, that are played on Beats One Radio, that you support, that I support, that deserved. And I said, there's tons of stuff out there. It just doesn't get the chance to, go on. But mainstream radio in the end will disappear.
Were you expecting the success of The Lion King?
Absolutely not.
No, I was going to follow this up with a quick question, because I wonder whether or not there have been things that have gone on to be hugely successful for you throughout your life that you just didn't get initially. And perhaps somebody else, David or someone else, went, no, this is a thing.
It was a funny story. Tim Rice rang me up and said, Disney are doing their first ever original animation film called The Lion King. And they asked me, who would you like to write with? And I said, Elton John. And they said, well, he'll never do it. And I said, of course he will. And Tim said, would you like to do it? I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. Are you kidding me? I've never done anything like this before. What a great challenge. And the thing about my life is it's always been around teamwork with Bernie and people and sharing and stuff. And when you do an animation film or you write a musical, it's teamwork. And you're working with people. I've got to meet Jeffrey Katzenberg through that, who's been one of my best, dearest friends for the rest of my life. But I don't think any of us, when we sat down to do it, could ever have imagined how successful it would be. I mean, the famous story of Jeffrey coming to show me the film in Atlanta when it was finished, and there was no Can You Feel the Love in there tonight. And I said, Jeffrey, where's Can You Feel the Love? He said, we couldn't find a place. I said, Jeffrey, every Disney film that's worth its salt has a big love song in it. And you've got Circle of Life in it, but you need the love song. So, to his credit, he didn't tell me to f off, I'm the head of the studio, you can piss yourself. He went back and he found a place for it. I've forgotten about it. When I see, I'm in London and I see a taxi cab with Lion King on it, I'm like, oh, well, really, yeah. But it was wonderful because it got me into writing songs for animation movies and writing other songs for Broadway, doing other music.
Which you love to do.
It changed my life. Well, it gave me another thing to do. And I'm very grateful for that.
And this is what I'm really happy about, is the fact that we're sort of arcing our way through here. And what I'm really trying to get across is that you've been able to build this complete world where you can take this talent that started when you were 3,
right,
and you can place it in all these different places for the good of people who need it, right through to young artists, right through to stage and Broadway and film and music and management and record labels. And
because I always liked all those things. And, when people said, oh, when they've reviewed my shows and I've done Circle of Life or Can You, they say, oh, I didn't come to hear from an animated film. It's like, well, it's written for a purpose. It's not written to be a rock and roll song. It's written to be a song in an animated film that has been hugely successful. Can't you just see the difference?
Yeah.
It's written for a specific thing.
But critics are there to be critical.
It's like, but I'm not a snob as music, as you know.
You have a strong taste. You have a strong mechanism of what you like and don't like. Well, I can't get you over the line on certain artists, and I've tried.
No, you can't. But that doesn't mean to say I don't like that type of music.
Yeah, it's true.
It's just certain artists that. No, I get them, but it just doesn't do it for me. And that's the human choice. It's like, some people are crazy about Sonic Youth. Some people are crazy about Barbra Streisand. And good, I'm glad they are, because if you didn't have the diversity of music, then if we all like the same thing, it would be hopeless. And the thing about people like Björk, about PJ Harvey, about Conor Oberst, and all those people that are kind of not under the radar, because that would be unfair to them all, but they provide something like Father John Misty, for example, the current example. They provide the necessary balance to all the crap that's up there.
Yeah, it's a counterbalance of quality.
They're counterbalancing the crap with the quality and their own voice. And if you take away that, then you lose everything.
So I can't believe it. You're going to Brazil, Argentina. You're still,
Chile.
The shows continue.
The show continues, and then I go home.
The show must go on, yeah.
And then I may do something with Clean Bandit when I'm home.
Who else are you writing with? Anyone else you've been writing with lately?
I've just written a song with Gaga for Star Is Born.
That must have been fun.
Yeah, I've just written 2 songs with Parker Millsap.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So yeah, I keep myself, it's just fun. It's unusual for me to write with those kind of people because it's a different way of writing. But with Gaga, it's melody first, and with Parker, usually it's melody first. Although you did come with word, Parker.
But who would you, is there someone that you're absolutely just completely enamored with right now on the front in terms of new artists that you'd love to get in the studio with? I'd
love to do something with Bruno Mars, but he's not a new artist. new artist-wise, well, Khalid.
Yeah, you love him?
I love Khalid. I'm playing in El Paso, where he comes from, on Wednesday.
I mean, let's just talk about the shows for a second, because, you know,
I'm nearly at 100 shows, you know that?
on this particular tour.
No, on Apple.
Oh, really? Of course, I know. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
doing something very special for that.
Yeah.
See, I can't keep up. There's too many things on the
Yeah.
table. I'm trying to position them like a jigsaw. It's nearly impossible. No, we're very, very thrilled. I mean, you know, look, you know how we feel about having on Beats One. It's just
I love, you know,
it's a
that's
glorious
been
thing.
one of the greatest things for me, because it makes me, I don't listen to old music a lot, but it's maybe go back and listen to combining the new music with the old music.
Oh, you
and
program
it
it
just opens
perfectly.
the treasure vault, and it reminds me how great my music's been in my life, how lucky I've been to have music that surrounded me. And if it's good, it'll sound great whether it's made in 1953 or whether it's made in 2017, and you can put the two together and they sound great.
It's the most perfectly programmed show, and I say that being one of the, you know, many DJs on Beats One who's proud of what they achieve, and I will lay down my cape for you to walk on there. It's a beautifully
I just love
programmed
it.
experience.
It just fills me with joy.
By the way, if you listen to Beats One, you'll know that Elton walks over that cape quite often. And
I do worse things than I piss on it.
I wondered whether or not you'll ever get to a point where you'll say, because I know you tried to, apparently tried to retire from performance back in the 70s. I'm sure there's been moments when you've wanted to walk away from it, but whether it's something you feel the need to announce you're walking away from, or whether you can just pick and choose as you go through life as and when you do.
There will come a time in the not too distant future where I will make a decision about what I'm going to do. And I've been thinking about it, and the decision hasn't fully been made yet. But there will come a time where I will want to stop touring, not playing, but touring maybe, or concentrate on something else. I just want to be honest with you, it's all about my boys, our boys. And you know, I'm a working musician. I don't just do a tour every 2 years, 3 years. I work all the time because I love to. So I'm different from the Springsteens and the Stones, and that. I don't go out on tours. I'm on tour. I'm doing, you know, currently I'm playing in places like Montana, and smaller places like 9,000 seaters, which not many people of my ilk go to. And for me, it's just like a huge party. But there will come a time when David and I are going to sit down and talk about what do we do. 70 years, you know, 70 is not 60, it's not 50, it's 70. And I want to spend time with my boys, and I just want to maybe have a little more time. But I don't know yet. It's not. There will be a decision made in the next 6 months, probably.
When you take a look at life through the lens of an artist, even just as a fan, and you realize the unusual journey that many artists have to go on through huge highs and huge lows and challenges and successes and failures, and it's such a unique perspective, and it seems to be born out of it, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong.
You know what it is? I am still basically at heart a fan.
Yeah.
I still love going into the record store. I still like buying my CDs. And I love what I do. I haven't lost, I'm not coasting, I'm not just doing it because I need the money. I'm doing it because I absolutely love it. And I love it as much as I did when I got my first 45 RPM, which was At the Hop by Danny and the Juniors and Re Petite by Jackie Wilson. It still has that same magic for me. And to me, you know, a lot of people get burnt out by it, but I don't get burnt out by it because I just love it. I'm so thrilled. I'm so lucky to have been involved in music. It's given me everything in my life.
It's been a beautiful life for us too, man. And good luck on Saturday for the party.
Thank you very much.
It's going to be brilliant.
I don't know who's going to be singing or who's performing or not, but it's just, I intend to celebrate it with thanks and gratitude because, you know, I want to live another 20 years. I want to be doing Beats Radio at 90, okay?
Here we are.